Hal Mcrae is remembered as one of the great designated hitters of his era, but that description only tells part of the story. Before the designated hitter became his position, Hal Mcrae was a fast young infielder with the Cincinnati Reds, a player whose speed looked like it might become one of the defining parts of his career. Then everything changed. During winter ball in Puerto Rico, Mcrae suffered a severe leg fracture sliding on the bases. It was the kind of injury that could have ended a career before it really started. He recovered, but he came back as a different player. The elite speed was diminished, and the injury helped move him away from the middle infield and into the outfield. So Mcrae adapted, and that ability to adapt became one of the central themes of his career. Cincinnati had tremendous talent in those years, and Mcrae struggled to establish a permanent role with the Reds. Then, before the 1973 season, he was traded to the Kansas City Royals. The timing could not have been better. That was the year the American League introduced the designated hitter, and Hal Mcrae became one of the players who helped define what the position could be. He wasn't just a hitter who happened to avoid playing the field. He was a professional hitter. He studied pitchers. He drove the ball into the gaps. He fought through at-bats. And maybe more than anything else, he played with an aggression that became part of the identity of those Kansas City Royals teams. Mcrae didn't run the bases politely. He attacked them. He was famous for turning singles into doubles. If an outfielder hesitated for a moment, Mcrae was thinking about the next base. If a throw was slightly offline, he was going, and if a second baseman was standing near the bag trying to complete a double play, he knew Hal Mcrae might be coming directly through him. The way Mcrae broke up double plays became so notorious that soon after one particularly violent play in the 1977 American League Championship Series, baseball tightened the rules governing how far a runner could go in trying to break up a double play. It became known as the Mcrae rule. That tells you something about how he played. Hal Mcrae made every 90 feet feel uncomfortable. By the middle of the 1970s, Kansas City had become one of the best young teams in baseball. George Brett was emerging. Amos Otis was in center field. Frank White was becoming one of the finest defensive second basemen in the game. And Hal Mcrae was right in the middle of the lineup. In 1976, Mcrae nearly won the American League batting title. And the player who beat him was his own teammate, George Brett. The race came down to the final day of the season, with Mcrae and Brett separated by almost nothing. Brett finished just ahead of Mcrae, giving Kansas City a 1-2 finish in the batting race. But the larger story was what was happening to the Royals. They were becoming contenders. Kansas City won the American League West in 1976, then again in 1977, and again in 1978. 3 straight seasons, the Royals met the New York Yankees in the American League Championship Series. In 3 straight Kansas City went home. Those losses became part of the identity of that Royals generation. They were excellent. They just couldn't get past New York until 1980. That year, the Royals finally beat the Yankees, and when they did, it wasn't close. Kansas City swept them. For Mcrae, Brett, White, Otis, and the other veterans who had lived through those earlier defeats, it was a breakthrough years in the making. The Royals were finally going to the World Series. They faced the Philadelphia Phillies, and even on baseball's biggest stage, Mcrae played the same aggressive way he always had. In Game 4, he doubled twice and helped Kansas City win. That was Hal Mcrae. Pressure didn't make him cautious. It made him more aggressive. Kansas City lost the series, but Mcrae's career continued to flourish. In 1982, he produced perhaps his greatest offensive season. He led the American League in runs batted in and became one of the league's most dangerous hitters. Think about the arc of that career. A young player known for speed suffers a devastating leg injury. He loses some of that speed. He adjusts. He moves away from the middle infield. He eventually becomes a designated hitter. Then he becomes one of the best designated hitters in baseball. And he still finds a way to be one of the most aggressive base runners in the sport. By the mid-1980s, the Royals were changing. Brett was now the established superstar. A new generation of players was arriving. But Mcrae was still there, and in 1985, Kansas City finally reached the mountaintop. The Royals came back from a 3-1 deficit against Toronto in the American League Championship Series. Then they fell behind the St. Louis Cardinals 3-1 in the World Series. Again, they came back. Kansas City won Game 7. World champions. Hal Mcrae had been with the Royals since 1973. He had been there before the first division title. He had lived through the heartbreak against the Yankees. He had played in the 1980 World Series. And now, more than a decade after arriving in Kansas City, he finally had his championship. Mcrae played into 1987 before his career ended. By then, he had spent most of his baseball life in Kansas City. He had become part of the identity of the franchise. Hal Mcrae's career is a reminder that great players aren't always great in the way anyone expected them to be. He was supposed to be a speedy up-the-middle player. Instead, injury changed that plan. So he built a different career, a hard-hitting career, an aggressive career, a championship career. And every time Hal Mcrae left the batter's box, the defense knew one thing. The play wasn't over yet. I'm Mr. Baseball, and this has been Players They Smell Baseball Podcast.